something we desire and we're not getting it, or we have something that's not working for us, probably the way we're trying to get it isn't going to get us there until something from that ancestral past or our own past gets seen. We have to look back in order to have what's in front. But it might not even be logically connected. I have a client I'm working with right now. She's young, but she has some unhealth things that just really don't make sense. And it was so obvious to me there was something about grandpa and something he had experienced. We dealt with that, her body's changing. That doesn't logically make sense, but you experienced it.
I did, because the day after I did that clearing, the next day, Constellation was on Saturday. Sunday, I go to an event and I meet the woman who is my current partner. And we are deeply in love, and the relationship is unlike anything that I've ever experienced, and is not coming with all of the same baggage that I was carrying with in every other relationship, because I was projecting the shit that I had with my mom onto my relationships and causing these really painful patterns.
We don't necessarily know what we're carrying in front of us. So just because I could be like, no, a lot of people have this where they think, oh no, I don't even talk to my mom. I don't care about her. I'm not worried about her. Oh, but the inner child within you who really needed her to be okay when you were a baby so you could get taken care of. Trust me, that child definitely does still keep your mom really close. So it can also be our own distorted view about how close we are energetically to someone, right? This is an example of well, I'm done with her. Yeah, well, it's not done with you. Your mother is your mother. That nothing changes that, no matter how locationally separate you are. We don't even know what we're carrying, and I think that's the power of what Constellations does with the field, is it can show us what we're carrying that we weren't even aware.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Conscious Grounding Podcast with myself, Anthony Manuel, where we're having elevated conversations brought right down to earth. Today we are joined by the one, the only Brooke Sophia Ramsay, one of my number one homies, aka Brookie Silva, aka the GOAT facilitator, working in the field, doing family constellations, one of the coolest, badass motherfuckers that I've ever met in my entire life. I call her warrior priestess. I call her Auntie Brooke. I call her all kinds of things, but first and foremost, I call her one of my favorite homies, and I'm really excited to be having this conversation with her today. She is by far the most skilled facilitator of group events where a collective field of healing takes place, where the entire group is an active participant in this sort of emergent space where you don't even know what's going to happen. And it's really the space that she creates, the space that she holds, that has produced some of the most powerful transformations for me in my own life. And I'll be talking about my own experiences in doing family constellations with her. But Brooke, hey homie.
Well, hey homie, thank you for that. When you said near the end of your amazing introduction that you were so excited to be talking to her, I was thinking, which her now? That's cool, because all these hers just got activated. Let's go. So that's so fun. So thank you for that fun. And something that is going on in my life is more of a willingness to speak in more of these sort of prepared or structured environments, right? You mentioned working in the field, being in constellations, that when I facilitate, it's these what's going to happen events. And so now, in the past, I had this stress about these recordings, right? Like I can't go on a podcast because I'll say something and then 6 months later I'll think something different, or it's not going to represent me, all those many me's. And so thank you, because it's a growth step for me to be so willing to do it. And of course with you, I'll do it because I love creating magic with you. For anyone who utilizes the Pattern app, where you get information about your astrology with your friends, your partners, Anthony and I have zero negative aspects. We have the most smooth sailing relationship ever. And so I love making this podcast. I love being on this podcast, and I love this idea of things that are going on that we don't see, but then bringing them here and being really grounded. Being grounded is one of the number one, that's the difference between a great facilitator and a bad facilitator. Like, you have to be in your body and present. So thank you for like bringing that on the planet and representing that with your brunked life.
Thank you, homie. And like, you know, I didn't prepare any specific questions. I had a couple of ideas for what we wanted to jam on today and where I'm going to kind of steer the conversation. But as far as how I podcast and how I interview guests, it is really in the spirit of what's going to emerge when we're just present with each other, and we're present with the conversation and what's going on. And I used to have that same sort of internet anxiety where it's like, if I say this thing, and I've actually deleted my own profiles probably between 8 to 12 times over the course of my life, because I would produce all of this content and then go through some sort of growth and go through some sort of perspective shift, and I'd be almost embarrassed of where I was coming from. And I actually have quite a few regrets about that, because having an archive of the places you were and the sort of roots that you were developing to demonstrate, well, this is how my character came to be. This is the journey that I took to get here. Yes, I don't believe the things that I was saying back then, that I was speaking with such conviction and certainty. And like that was like a necessary phase of my development as well. And yeah, you know, as much as this is like a structured space, we got the studio, we got the mics, we got this thing going on. I'm really just seeing where this conversation is going.
I'm going to pop in. I absolutely love how you just described that, because I regularly am like, okay, delete the whole Instagram, delete everything. No, I can't build a new website because it's going to be old in 3 months. But your reflection about having the archive, I totally agree with. And this idea of the character arc. And one of my backgrounds, one of the most influential parts of my own development was I was an apprentice under a Toltec shaman, a Nagual, for a few years. And in Toltec philosophy, or philosophy is not really the word, but we'll call it that, there's this practice of recapitulation. And recapitulation is when you go back to past experiences and past memories and even past places, physical locations, and you retake your energy from them. And so there's a lot of connections, obviously, with family constellations, which you're probably already making, but the idea of actually going back before you delete is, if you just delete, right, if you just get rid of it, you actually haven't dealt with it. I had a teacher who once said to me when I really wanted to be done with something in my life, I was just like, it was a moment of, please God, you know, and I said, I just want to be done with it. Like, I'm done with it, I said to my teacher. And he said to me, well, it's not done with you. So if we try to get rid of something before we've let it affect us or we've taken it in, we're actually not getting rid of it. We think we are, right? I thought I deleted my profile. I thought I got rid of those archives of whatever I said on that YouTube. You know, I'm teasing, but we're not actually. It's still with us.
And right? How is it still with us? Like, how do we actually go back and recapitulate? Like, when you're saying take the energy back, and I'm smiling because I just had a direct experience of this in my own life. But I'm really curious when it's like, when something's not done with you, how do you complete those cycles?
So there are, methods in the Toltec framing that involve certain breathwork practices, involve movements of the body, and okay, maybe you're into that. But there's also the practice of writing, which you do a lot. Journaling about experiences. There's going back and visualizing experiences with a practitioner or on your own. There's many ways, but I'm a big believer, and this goes into everything I do, is reclaiming our body as our oracle, as our wisest self. And so my sense is our body will take us to those places. If it's a physical recapitulation, for example, our body will allow a memory to come up. Like, so much is happening here that if we allow, the recapitulation will just happen. It's like, I don't have to go forcing and making a strategy and putting it in my calendar app. It is going to occur as I get in touch with this and I become more embodied. This is part of what I think is one of the most underrated or talked about benefits of constellations. So when people attend group constellations, they have the experience of representing someone or something that could be from someone's past or present. You know, there's many things we can represent. But by the end of the day, once you've had that experience of representing and you realized your body could get information, and all of a sudden your body felt a certain way, wanted to move a certain way, had things to say, once you've had that experience, you realize this is wise. Oh my gosh, this is like so untapped. And so I think experiencing constellations help people trust themselves more. And if that's what I'm here doing on the planet for the rest of my life, I'm so game, because I want to live on a planet where human beings are in their body and trusting their body.
So I want to slow right down, because now we're getting into terms and ideas, and even just the word constellations, which we've thrown around a bunch, but haven't given any framework for understanding. You work with a modality called Family Constellations. It's something that I've experienced myself a couple of times. You facilitate these group spaces, and it's really incredible work. And this is coming from someone who's worked with coaches and energy healers and on plant medicine and subconscious hypnosis and all of these different things. And I experience how powerful and potent your modality is. And I would love for the audience who are listening, who might be like, why do they keep saying constellations? Is this an astrology thing? Is this like, you know, am I looking at the stars? Does it matter if I'm a Pisces? Like, what's going on here? Let's talk about what constellations is and isn't.
Amazing. I will tease and say that my original constellations teacher, and I'm going to answer your question because you're correct, we need to do this grounding. But my teacher, who's in her 70s, she's this like powerful Irish woman. She laughs at people who've like done the plant medicine, done the coaching, done it, because then they sit in her chair and she dials in and she solves the thing right away through constellations. And so she's always, you know, and she's older, so she's seen it all. So she's kind of like, oh yeah, okay, sure, you're an empath, you're this, just sit in my chair, you know. So I'm laughing because I believe all those things are so important, and this is the best modality that I've seen and experienced too. That's why I'm doing it. So constellations comes from a few places, but there's this man, Bert Hellinger, he's German. He lived with the Zulu tribe, the Zulu nation in Africa for about 12 years. And he was observing that when something would go wrong, someone would be sick, the crops weren't growing, there was a crime committed. The collective idea was never to punish or believe that it was caused by one individual. It was, what's going on with the ancestors? What's going on in our community? How are we all interacting together? It was the belief that there are things that happen in the field that then get expressed through one person. And so in comparison with a lot of our Western idea, which is this individual hero who's creating their own destiny, this is very different, right? And so he brought it to Germany, and it was actually first used as a group modality with descendants of perpetrators of war crimes and descendants of Holocaust victims. And so these descendants were carrying the guilt or the shame or the pain and the terror, all these things within them. And then constellations is a method of bringing to light, balancing the energy by being seen in a space. That part I'm not saying exactly as I want to do it. And part of this is constellations in general, I really believe, are hard to verbalize. It's difficult to describe what goes on in the field. But what happened? Go ahead, Anthony.
I want to also, because one of the things that I am very aware of when podcasting is the assumptions of what the audience knows or doesn't know. And so when we reference two things quite a bit in the conversation in the first 10 to 12 minutes that we've been talking. One is constellations, which we're trying to explain now. And the second one is the field. And we're not talking about like a field full of flowers and strawberries right now. We're kind of speaking more from maybe like a little Joe Dispenza lens where there's this cool quantum field of potentiality. And like I want to almost have a clear definition of what that means, especially in the context of how we're using it, because a lot of different people, like the word love, everyone has a different experience of the word love. I'd say that depending on who's listening right now, you're going to have a different intuitive definition of what we mean when we say the word field. So what's our working definition of the field today?
So from a constellations perspective, I experience the field as the place of information and knowledge, and it is timeless and formless, and it gives us, we have access to information by tuning into it. So similar to if I listen to a piece of music, I will then have a certain feeling, I will be in a certain frequency, I gain information from listening to that music. And that information is not just words I now heard, it's in sequences, it's patterns of tones, it's a feeling that's now in my body because I have that information. So similarly, like if music came on and I was listening, it would affect me. The field is affecting us and working on us. When we come together in constellations, we're intentionally paying attention to the field. We're asking the field, we're letting the field show us information. Even though in our lives, that's happening all the time. Right? And I know, what do I want to say here? I believe probably most people listening to this podcast have had experiences where they've just known something. We would say, oh, that comes from the field. The field is giving you information. It's working on you to then move you the way that it wants. And that one's tough for me because I don't want to say the field has a desire, other than I believe all things are energy and energy wants to balance itself. So the field is giving us at any given moment what is required to balance the system. That's how I'm going to frame it. But
Yeah.
I feel you have some really good stuff on this, my friend. You have such a great understanding.
I'm going to try and give some analogies for people that will be helpful. The way that I see the field is, like you said, it's a space which is non-physical and non-local and non-temporal, as in it kind of exists outside of time. And that is very, very confusing. But what you could kind of imagine is that there's all this information that exists at the same time. This is kind of like where the information containing everything in infinity. It's like it's a library that everything that has ever existed, all the data and all the information about everything that ever existed, everything that currently exists and everything that will exist lives in this non-local, non-temporal, non-physical space. And you can kind of think of it like a radio, where we are the radios that are picking up frequencies, and all of these different radio stations are kind of existing in the same space. We can't see radio stations that are playing music, doing talk shows, having all of these things happening, but all of these radio signals are kind of existing at the same time. And then based on where your radio tuner is attuned to, you will receive certain information about certain radio frequencies, and that information will come through the speaker. And so in the same way, like our bodies, you were referring to the wisdom of our bodies and our abilities to take in information. In the same way, like when we attune our psyches, our bodies, our hearts, basically our vibe, you know, if you want to talk about it, when I talk about like the vibration of a person, or like that's the resonance that you're currently landing, and it's the sum total, where you're talking about everything is energy. Energy behaves like frequency when you look at it from a quantum physics perspective. There is this massive field of information that has all these different radio signals, and we tune ourselves to be able to receive information that gives us an experience. So instead of a radio station playing your favorite classic rock oldies, you have insights about what happened to you when you were a kid, and then this moment of healing happens and your energy shifts entirely. And that's how I kind of explain the field, is like it's all of these radio stations are kind of going on, and you can't see them, you can't hear them, you can't feel them, you can't touch them, but you can tune to them. And when you tune to them, something comes through. And so we're the radios, and the radio stations in this big field is the field itself. It's all the information in the field. That's how I understand and explain it.
I love this, and it's a great explanation. And as you described, at the end there, you know, it coming in to our bodies, I was thinking about how we get to choose what we do with the information. So some So I see this when I'm facilitating a constellation, for example. I saw this with many people, but I'll just put it more generally. If I'm open and I'm receptive, my access to that information is higher right away. And then also, if I am willing to act from that information, I'll continue to get more of it until it gets shut down. It just ends. There'll be a conclusion. Whereas sometimes we're overwhelmed by that information coming in, and we might block or resist it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a completely different experience of being in the field, right? It's like if you have those friends that when you're listening to a song and they want to show you a song, and then they give you the first 20 seconds and they're like, okay, next song. And you're like, I was just settling in. You don't get the full experience of it. So part of, I think, humans' ability to gather more and more information from the field is to slow down. Like, I love what you've been doing with your regular meditation practices. And it's actually also to move towards fearlessness, meaning nothing the field shows me or gives me from this frequency is a problem. It's all okay. There's no piece of information that is bad, even if it creates an intense feeling, even if it's confusing. It's only confusing here. Our body is comfortable with it. I'll often see people in constellations gain a new insight. So it's basically they will see something that they had a different story about their whole life. So they'll see something in a new light. And their mental brain might hate it. Like, I don't like this new picture. But I'll watch their body go, like I've been carrying this lie. I've been walking around with a distorted view for so long. It's so relaxing once I let the field show me the truth and I stop resisting what's wanting to be shown to me.
Well, and to your point too, when we started talking about the field, right? The field is not something that you access magically when you're in one of these group facilitated events or when you're doing plant medicine or when you're meditating. This is something that's omnipresent, right? Like the field is like, if you're thinking about it as the source, and if you look at quantum physics, you see this like field of potentiality where people are observing, they're witnessing things, and then that potentiality collapses into observable phenomenon, and that's what we call material reality and existence. And that's how we live as conscious beings, and that's how the New Age people kind of justify the whole you create your own reality thing, is because your aperture of observation is collapsing this field of potentiality into the experience that you're living. And really, really dangerous thing if you go too far with that. You just start twisting it in particular ways that it doesn't quite work. But we're always in this field of information. We're always receiving information from the field based on where our psyches, our bodies are presently tuned to. And I think what's unique and special about these family constellation events that you facilitate is the space that you create, is the safety of openness, is the permission for people to feel things that they would normally otherwise reject, feel like they don't have the capacity to hold or feel or experience, to directly go in and confront things that would be inconvenient for you to confront and direct when you're in the busy hustle and bustle of your own life and you're busy trying to maintain your persona and your job and your relationships and all of these things. It's all of the stuff that we don't make space to tune into. And so I would love to give people a picture of we've talked a little bit about the origins, about the realization that it's like, it's not like it's counter to this individual hero making your own life. There's this other collective field and these connections to other people that make up the field, that make up this information. But I would love to walk through what a constellation's experience is like, how you set the stage, what the roles of the participants and the facilitator are, and really just kind of bring a person into the experience of what that looks like, so they kind of understand what is this process. I know that a lot of people, when they listen to podcasts, we can talk about all these cool ideas that you and I know, we know what we're jamming about here, but someone who's never experienced it, they don't have a reference point for, well, what is it exactly that we're experiencing? Why are we doing it? What are we doing exactly? So when you're getting into a Constellations event that you're facilitating, What does that look like front to back?
Beautiful. When someone walks through the door at their first experience of a constellation, they know they're in for a few hours at least, right? We're getting together. They're going to be around people who they mostly don't know. So oftentimes we might come with a friend, but we get into the circle, we come into the space, we're surrounded by strangers. We sit in a circle. So there would be about a C-shaped circle, a half circle, part of a three-quarters of a circle. and just when sitting in that circle, sitting in that chair, often people will already start to feel like, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm glad I am, or how did I get here, right? It's quite a pull that people often feel to their first constellation. I'm sitting at the front of the room with an empty chair beside me, and through the day that chair will be filled with participants who are sitting in the larger circle. When people come to a constellation, they will sit as circle holders. They will be bearing witness to things playing out in someone else's story, and so when someone else has a constellation. They will have their own constellation sitting beside me. When that happens, and they sit beside me, I'm tuning in to their body, I'm tuning into whatever is arising in the moment. And often, they're coming with an issue they have, you know. I can't seem to get a better job. I'm struggling in my relationships. I'd like to experience more blank in my life. And what I'm doing as I'm tuning into them is asking specific questions that we know from constellations that are showing us what patterns in the family history or the geographical history of this person might be the cause of their current reality. Once I have a sense of what I think it's not even what I think, it's what's being told to me, honestly, that could be happening for this person that's causing their issue or moving them, or is the barrier to moving towards the next step, I will ask that person to choose people in the group to represent different elements that I want to bring into the constellation. Often in a constellation, that will look like, please put in someone to represent you, someone to represent your father, someone to represent money. It can be any array of things, often with the person involved. Those people who are sitting around the circle then do step in as representatives. And the experience of representing, as I was speaking a bit about it earlier, it's so powerful because you truly then get information and sensations and desires and impulses that are not your own. And you use them in the circle. You follow them in the circle. My role as the facilitator is to find where there's a disruption or a disorder in between these representatives to support a new picture and a new story to help the client to move forward. As someone who's experienced constellations, Anthony, does that sound about... Is that how you experienced it as your first time?
That is how I experienced it, yeah. I want to pause to slow down a little bit because the experience of having something told to you, right, as you're speaking to someone who's in the chair, and you say, well, it's not really my thoughts, right? It's not what I'm thinking. You're not sitting there as a coach who's problem solving. It's like, oh, this person's not making money, or they're not, they keep getting in fights in their relationship. Let's find a framework or a solution, or there's something that's coming through. What's your experience of that? How does that feel to you? And then how do you choose to move forward as the facilitator based on that information you're receiving?
Thank you. I receive it kind of from behind on my left side, honestly. I get like a knock, and I will sometimes be aware of that. Sometimes we've skipped that part and it's just my mouth's opening and things are coming out. So I experience it as being an allowance, my teacher calls it a hollow bone, coming with no story about that person or what's right or wrong, Bert Hellinger talks about, no, the founder, he made a note once about being on the side of the ancestors. And I'll explain a little bit how I experience that in the field. When someone is telling me their story, which they've probably told a lot of people, and they've told themselves for years, right? My dad was an alcoholic, and, you know, he was not nice to my mom, and my mom should have divorced him, and whatever their story is. My role as a facilitator is not to buy it. It's not to not be present and hearing it, but it's actually, that is a perception that's obviously in the way. So when I'm taking the side of the ancestors, I'm allowing that dad to have his voice, which might be, if he's passed, I might start hearing, I might start seeing those people arrive, because they're like, okay, I actually want to help my child now, and I know that them carrying the stories and helping, so let me come help you heal that story. Like, I'm ready. You know, they come with love. So my experience of it is often, just like when we're coaching, you know, I'm fully present with someone, but I'm also, it's not just them that I'm with their great soul. I'm with what is actually going to support their evolution as a love and light being, as opposed to what's the current constraint and the dialogue. So how I experience it, sometimes it's really quick. Someone sits beside me and I instantly know I have to ask them, when's the last time you tried to kill yourself? I've had that. I've had someone sit beside me. I've asked that. I didn't know this person. I didn't actually know he had attempted. Right away, that accessed and entered us into where we needed to go. I also sometimes have it where someone sits beside me and they're so in their story that it can take quite a bit of time for the fluff to kind of, it's like getting the dust off. I just let them talk. I just let it kind of go. The consciousness is hilarious. It just wants to tell its story. And then it'll get to a moment of pause where I will look at them and I'll say, I look different to you now, don't I? Because they've exhausted their own story. And I've not bought into it up until then. And they go, yeah, you look different. And then they'll start to look different. And what's actually happening is we're cleaning our eyes. If we're walking around with false stories, those are always lensing everything we experience, right? So one of the, I love facilitating, and so thank you for your reflection about my skill. Like, it is a skill. I've been practicing facilitating in many ways for a long time, and I love it. I have natural gifts around it. But it's also about having zero concern for that person liking me or even liking what I have to say. So I experience the field as being nice to me, giving me a lot of information because it trusts me to do something with the information. I actually believe I get access to useful information because I'm not going to filter the field to the best of my ability. I hope that is somewhat sensical, Anthony. It's an experience that's super personal to me. I don't know how other facilitators feel it. And it even feels a bit vulnerable sharing about it because it's like I am receiving data. It's not that. It's as natural as drinking this cup of coffee.
Yeah. I think something that people could relate to is the feeling of being in flow state, where if you're a writer and you get out of your own way for a second, you get out of your own head for a second, and you're not worried about who's going to read this and who's going to like it. Is this piece of writing going to perform? And you start writing, and all of a sudden these ideas, these prose, these frameworks, or these, like, they just kind of come out of you. And I've had this experience as a musician where I sit down with my guitar and I'm not worried about, like, oh, I got to write a hit song. I'm just writing music and I'm just playing. You know, the word play as opposed to perform comes through, and I'll write a song in like less than an hour and it comes through me. And this experience of something coming through you without, it's not your felt sense of you. It's not the mind. It's not the ego personality necessarily that has explanations and labels and diagnostics and systems and mental models and all of these different things. Like you said, your role as the facilitator is to witness, hear, experience, give space to, without buying into their stories and project their own stuff back onto them, or project your own stuff onto them. It's to hear them and then allow something to come through you. And I'll speak a bit to my own experience being in a couple of your constellations and talk about like how this even relates as a representative. When I first sat in your chair, there were people who were representatives of my grandfather, of my uncle, I believe, and of my mother. And when you're talking about these people who are like, these are total strangers, people who I've never met. There was one woman who represented my mother who I knew quite well. But when she was a representative, she wasn't the woman that I had known and I had gone to workshops with and who was a friend and a colleague. She was my mother. She was saying things with the little mannerisms that my mom did. She had the same body language and little quirks that my mom had, and that receptivity to the information about like the essence and character of my mother was coming through her. There was a man who I had never met who was representing my grandfather who had just passed about maybe a month prior. And I was looking at this man, and it was my grandfather. This man who I'd never met, I was looking at him and I broke into tears. And this man was my grandfather. I was blown away by this. And then the experience of being a representative as well, after having that experience and trusting the space that you had created and just trusting that like, okay, I'm going to stand here. I don't know the person who I'm representing. I don't know the person who, who's related. Like, I don't know any context. I'm just going to receive an impulse and act. And I would say things and behave in particular ways that would just rock these people, just like level them, because I'm channeling through the essence and spirit of the person or thing that I'm representing for them. That's something that's really hard to explain to a logical, rational mind, or, even from the perspective of coaching, where coaching your problem solving, coaching your, looking for things that you can do to change so that you can improve performance, or output, or you're basically solving bottlenecks for people. This is something totally different. This is channeling through the reality of something. And it's so different from anything that I've ever experienced. And I find it really, really fascinating, too, that the emphasis is on ancestry, on family lineage. And I think what would be helpful for people for context, I think the aha moment for me in terms of why it's called Constellations is because you as a human being, as an individual with our little North American hero individualization, self-actualizing mindset, forget the fact that we come from a mother and father and maybe a family of like brothers and sisters. And prior to that, there are grandparents and great-grandparents, and there's a lineage that we come from and cultural context that we're born into. And all of those individual factors that influenced, that come together as a confluence to create who we are, that we kind of realize that like we are individuals. We have the experience of being individual beings, but we exist in the context of all of these other nodes of consciousness, all of these other nodes and characters and people and personalities, and the constellation of all of these different nodes. That's why it's called Constellations. That was my big aha moment. That's who you are. And so if you're experiencing a personal issue, there's some sort of kink in the connection in these constellations. Or one of the things that I really had an aha moment about is like, if I'm looking at my ancestry, part of my story is putting the ancestry out of order. And that lack of order is creating some sort of disconnect in who I actually am.
Yes. A lack of order creates chaos. So if someone's having an issue in their current life, you're correct. We would look to the rest of the stars around and say, where is it out of order? Where is it not in its proper constellation? It's not, I'm not in my place. So I think one of the ones that is a very universal experience for people, is the idea of I'm carrying the burdens of my mother, right? I don't want my mother to have experienced XYZ, so I'll carry her burdens. But what we know in constellations is that's completely out of order, that it's actually impossible for a child to be the big one, we call it, right? A child loves to be the big one because a child comes out and guess what? They are in debt, regardless of how good, bad parented they were. They are so in debt to their mother because their mother has just given them the best possible gift anyone could give anyone on the planet, which is life. So the scale is off, right? Like, you've given me everything. And then the child, who's filled with unconditional love towards the parent, subconsciously, even if they don't think they are, subconsciously that child wants to do everything for the parent. So what we end up seeing is later in life, this is the one I feel is quite universal for a lot of people, is they have pity on their mother or father. They oh, it was so hard for them. They say this, oh, I've forgiven them because they didn't know what they were doing because they had it rough. And in Constellations we say the child cannot forgive the parent because the child is the little one. The child can only see what the parent has experienced and done, but cannot forgive. Forgiveness puts us above someone else. And the parent is always the big one to the child. That is one of the ones that is the most rocky for people, but I have seen time and time again actually changes people's lives. When you go into your place as, I'm the little one, I'm the child, it's actually not my place to forgive. And as someone who has experienced my own, negative stories, negative experiences, when I took my parents in as my parents, those are my parents, my whole life changed. I lost the story of, oh, what if my parents had been like this? They should have done this. They weren't, oh, I'll forgive them because they didn't know what they came from. No, all of that away. Simply, that's my parents. I come from them. I'm the little one. They're the big one. It's reordering us. So I Anthony, so I have this really big sense that was specifically for somebody watching the podcast, and that person's probably kind of like, that's not fun information. That's not fun. You didn't like hearing that, whoever you are. I just needed to say that. So that was a bit coming here. So I'll bring it back and I'll say, we know things like intergenerational trauma. We know that people are carrying things that their parents never got to feel or express. So we come to Constellations to allow those ancestors to express. The tears get shed, the love gets shared, the thing they didn't get to say, they couldn't say because of the constraints of their life. Once that gets said or shifted, like your experience of your grandfather, he's free too. His spirit is freer. You're freer. So what we say is it's bringing back the flow of love across the ancestral system. So what we want to do with our ancestors is we want to be able to receive all the contributions they have for us because they really want to help us. We get to that point, right? There's help available. There's support, I'll call it. And it's our stories and it's the disordering that's stopping the flow of that support. So we one of the phrases we use in Constellations is, I'll take all the good you gave me and I leave the rest with you. Which is the alteration of that child story we came in with, which is, I'll carry it all, Mom. I don't want to see you sad. I can't have that. I'll take care of you, Mom. Which maybe we're not verbally saying as a child, but we're living as. Mm-hmm. And we change that story. This is one of the most potent ways Constellations can quickly change someone's lives, is they move from, I'll carry it, to, I'll take all the good you gave me, Mom. Thank you for life. And I leave the rest with you. And what we see in the constellation is whoever is representing the mom is like, thank God, give it back to me. I never asked you to take, like, that's for me. And we'll often also see that mother then be able to pass it back to her mother and pass it back. And what we want is we want that the pain or the difficulty to go back to where it needs to actually be dealt with. I cannot for my great-great-grandmother deal with her abusive husband. Like that's not for me in this lifetime, but I can, if I'm carrying any of it or trying to hold it, I can sure send it back. So it's really interesting, Anthony. I find some of the most brilliant things, some of the most brilliant truths are paradoxes, right? When I want to help, I want to help my friend, I want to help my family, I want to help my mother, I don't. Like, it doesn't work, it doesn't flow. When I help myself, I end up actually helping them. The healing actually moves through me when I work on my own story, I clean my own lenses. And that is something that we, in self-development, we know this, we hear this, but Constellations actually shows it to you. Like, you will see it in real time, right? And it's a modality that allows you to be with your part. What comes up as I share all that, my friend?
I'm really fascinated by the part of our conversation where we started talking about recapitulation and really wanting to be done with certain things, right? And I think a big part of my work in my coaching is helping people go back to moments where they experienced traumas or betrayals or experiences where they were really hurt, especially as children. And in that moment, they made that pain mean something about themselves. And like you said, they get wrapped up in their story and they start to project their story onto the rest of the world. And they act from the story that they made when they were young. And you can really only resolve that personally if you are not carrying other people's pain and other people's stories as well. So there's like this interesting thing about personal responsibility that kind of comes up, where it's like it's your personal responsibility to alchemize and recapitulate the stories that you formed when you were young and you had you were an innocent child who didn't know any better, and you made some painful experience mean something about yourself, and you've been building a whole life around this story that formed when you were like 4 to 7 years old. And you can't do that with your mother or father's pain.
Yeah.
You can't do that work yourself. And so there's, the difference between some of maybe the regression and trauma healing work that my coaching is formed around and what I experienced with you in Constellations was there was this unburdening that I experienced when I felt, my mother and her brother and then my grandfather in this proper ordering. Right. And I gave things back to my mother, and I released that, and I allowed that to be her cross to bear, her experiences, part of her lessons. The other piece was this realization that if I take that from her, then all of these lessons that her soul came to learn, or that my grandfather, his soul came to learn, they don't get that. If I'm taking it, I'm keeping it for myself, then I'm trying to take something that is meant to teach them lessons that they were meant to learn while they were here. And when that's unburdened, then I'm actually free to see my own stories more clearly, see my own relationship to myself more clearly.
I want to highlight something about this, Anthony, is at that point, I think when you did that constellation, you were single but desiring to move into relationship, right? And it's a correct impulse. Like, you're at the age, like you're in your masculinity, like it was something you desired. And so you, if I would have verbally said to you, oh well, once you give whatever you're trying to carry for your mother back, a woman could come in. There's a space for someone to come in, be beside you. That wouldn't have really made sense, right? Like, I could say that to you, but okay, cool, Brooke. But I felt in that constellation when I saw what moved, and I don't remember all constellations, so it's a bit fuzzy, but it's like I remember knowing, oh, now a woman can come in for Anthony. Like, now this had to move. So this is an example of we talk about the constellation. This thing that seems completely unrelated, right, to you being in a successful romantic relationship, right? Your grandpa, your mom, like what does that matter? Once that moves, it actually does shift the possibility of other things coming in your way. So that's, I think, one of the powers and the important things to note is logically, if we have something we desire and we're not getting it, or we have something that's not working for us, probably the way we're trying to get it isn't going to get us there until something from that ancestral past or our own past gets seen. So we say, like, we have to look back in order to have what's in front, but it might not even be logically connected. I have a client I'm working with right now. She has a lot of body issues. She's young, but she has some unhealth things that just really don't make sense. And it was so obvious to me there was something about grandpa and something he had experienced. We dealt with that. Her body's changing. That doesn't logically make sense. But you experienced it.
I did, because the day after I did that clearing, the next day, Constellation was on Saturday. Sunday, I go to an event and I meet the woman who is my current partner. And we are deeply in love, and the relationship is unlike anything that I've ever experienced, and is not coming with all of the same baggage that I was carrying with in every other relationship, because I was projecting the shit that I had with my mom onto my relationships and causing these really painful patterns. And there was like a space that was created for that relationship to come in. And again, it doesn't make logical sense. Why would unburdening myself with my mother's pain that I was carrying? And when you're talking about like looking back to see what's in front, it's because we're already holding what's behind us in front of us the whole time. We already have stories that were formed in the past that is all we can see in front of us, and we can't even see the possibilities and the things that are actually in front of us. We're living the past over and over and over again, even though we say we aren't. And
even though we don't necessarily know what we're carrying in front of us. So just because I could be like, no, a lot of people have this where they think, oh, no, I don't even talk to my mom. I don't care about her. I'm not worried about her. Oh, but the inner child within you who really needed her to be okay when you were a baby so you could get taken care of. Trust me, that child definitely does still keep your mom really close. So it can also be our own distorted view about how close we are energetically to someone, right? And this is an example of I'm done with her. Yeah, well, it's not done with you. Your mother is your mother. That nothing changes that, no matter how locationally separate you are. And so we don't even know what we're carrying. And I think that's the power of what Constellations does with the field, is it can show us what we're carrying that we weren't even aware. Right? I see this with things like I could have lived in a house before and I got an attachment to that house, and now I can't fully live in my I just bought a new home and I'm supposed to be enjoying it, and I'm not fully enjoying it. Well, then guess what? There's actually something I didn't say to that house before. Like, these seem like Constellation shows me not to underestimate energy and not to underestimate our experiences and how much they are affecting us today, and how one subtle shift of the energy, one statement said to that past house, thank you, can now allow me to enjoy my new real estate. What? And I'm giving that as a real example that I've seen. And so it's not just the ancestral patterns, it's our attachment to our own history stories too. Right? I have a friend who had this beautiful, powerful experience in Mexico, and she'll compare her current reality to like that experience that she had. But what we actually want to do is put that experience in its right order. It's actually 5 years ago. It's not here. We need to get it in its right order too, just like we want to put our family in our right order. If I'm the firstborn and I'm acting like the baby, my life's probably chaos. You know, if I'm living here in Vancouver and I'm imagining I'm still 5 years ago in Mexico, there's something in my field that's not flowing the way that I might want it to. So much of what Constellations does is it brings us here.
Yeah. To the idea that we're always in the field. And we're always tuning to information that's coming through us in the field. We might have information that's trying to come through us about the life that we're being called to live, about the experiences that we want to have, about making more money, being in the relationship, doing all of this stuff. But we can't tune to that frequency and let it in because we're still tuned to the stories that we made when we were younger, that we're still tuned to these unconscious things that, like you said, we probably don't even realize because they're subconscious. They're not conscious stories. They're subconscious stories. They're subconscious associations. They're subconscious things that formed when we were very young. And we didn't have the conscious wherewithal to make sense of them at the time. So the meaning that we made back then, we're still unconsciously projecting onto our present moment, and we can't see reality clearly.
Yes. And the power of our spirit, when we get it stronger and stronger and stronger, our spirit is just like our body. Like we train it, we develop it, we let it grow. When we bring our spirit to a constellation, for example, our spirit will give us and show us what's the thing from the past or what's the thing that needs to be looked at. It's very often different than what we think. I think my problem is my dad was an alcoholic. I sit in the chair, my problem is I had an eating disorder when I was, 15 and I haven't forgiven myself. So the story we have even about what's causing the problem is also, we don't believe ourselves, don't buy our own bullshit. So what is powerful about growing in your spirit is that you start to let it reveal, right? I sat in the chair to receive a constellation, I don't know, maybe it's a year or 6 months ago or something, and I had not remembered something from my life in a very long time. I didn't know it was still affecting me. I sit in the chair, I'm telling the facilitator these things I want, and then all of a sudden, I look at her and I said, I have to tell you about this car accident I was in when I was 16, and I just start bawling. Like, I haven't thought about this car accident in years. And it's totally changed my life, my experience of happiness. I was carrying guilt. I was the driver in the car accident. Friends of mine were in the car. They got injured. We brought those people into the constellation. She had people represent those friends of mine. And what became clear was I was still looking at them. There's a part of me who was like, I can't move forward in my life because I'm still making sure you're okay, and I screwed up. I'm bad. My soul and their soul got to speak, and then finally I could turn around and go into my own future. And I have had a level of happiness that I didn't know I hadn't been having before, that I hadn't been letting myself have. And I tell that story to say, I hadn't imagined I needed a constellation on the car accident I was in when I was 16. It happened when I sat in the chair, and my great soul, who's been strengthened, who's been doing this, who's like ready to go, she let it out. And I couldn't hold back on her. Like, that's who got to run the show. So I want to encourage, and I am forever just in awe of people's great soul. And our great soul has so much to give each of us. And constellations, to me, is a modality that the soul loves. Right? My body loves going to the gym. My body loves going to jiu-jitsu. My soul loves jiu-jitsu too, but my body loves that. Well, you know what? My soul is like, okay, I'm in the play. You're listening to me now? I get to play? Give me the constellations. Let's go. It's like a kid at like a playscape. It's a place where your soul gets to give information and experience things that it's probably been craving. And I see at the end of constellations, I mentioned earlier, people come in as strangers. Oh my God, they're just like in a love bucket after. People feel so connected. People are just in their true essence, which is love. When our souls come out, it's So I just want to say how appreciative I am of all the work you've done up till now, of all the work all of us have done. We're doing this so that our great souls get to play more often. And now when we're talking, it's my soul and your soul. It's not just our physical bodies, right? We're playing on a different space. And I want more and more people more you access your soul, the stronger it gets, the braver it gets. You get to live from there.
And what's the distinction of someone who's living more from their soul versus someone who's living more from their personality or their ego or their stories? Like, what's the difference in actual lived experience?
Yeah, soul, action gets taken more intently and more easily because there's lack of fear when acting. We can leave things or enter things with ease. So I would say I make a less of a big deal about things, right? Say I want to leave a relationship. Well, okay, I don't even really have to leave. I can just be in the frequency of that relationship is just, it's taking another form and I'm not fighting it. Way more energy is someone who lives from their soul. They have way more energy because they're not spending energy maintaining false realities and structures. So if I am living in my should of my personality, like, okay, I should speak a certain way in this environment. I do this. I work with a lot of executives, so I see this a lot where people have their executive mask and their corporate mask. It takes them so much energy to be withholding that image. Whereas when they start operating from their soul, and I see many leaders, it's part of my work. I support them to be more in their soul, but still be in their life. Now, they're getting to enjoy those meetings that before they were thinking, I got to put on a mask. And now they have more energy to make faster decisions, pivot, have hard conversations, because to them, the soul, there's no such thing as a hard conversation. To the soul, there's no such thing as like too fast of a decision. So you have way more energy. You move in the world more quickly, and sometimes quickly can also mean more relaxed. Like maybe you move in the world more like you can actually, you don't go on vacation and you don't have to visit every site. You can just enjoy your coffee on the cafe, and that's just as beautiful of an experience. Like you're less needing of stimulation or stories, right? There's a difference between I think I like that and oh, I really like that. And I think people that are in their soul have more of the, oh yeah, that's good. And when we're living more from our ego personality, we have to create experiences that we think that we like. People get so surprised when they start operating from their soul. They get so surprised about what they actually enjoy. Right? It's great. It's like, oh, I didn't know I liked that. My ego didn't know that. My ego wasn't letting me do that. Now my soul is like thrilled. Right? And our relationships are smoother. I mean, I think there's a lot. I'd be curious what you think, because you know this too. Like, what do you see in the difference between people who are more living from their soul?
The thing that resonated the most about what you said is the amount of energy that a person expends to maintain or to keep up their persona, where there's an expected way that they should behave in the world. And the reason that they behave in this way is to protect themselves from pain. Is to protect themselves from a pain that they probably experienced in the past. And they need to manage. It's perception management, not just how other people perceive them, but how they perceive themselves, because maybe they're carrying shame or guilt, and that impacts the way that you show up in relationships, because when you're showing up in relationships, you're trying to, again, maintain a perception of yourself that keeps you safe. And then you don't attune to the other person. You don't recognize them. You don't see them for how they actually are, because you're projecting your story onto them about how they see you and what it means about you. And you make assumptions about what they think about you. And you don't want them to think that about you. So you act in all kinds of ways. This is the people pleasing. This is the codependency. This is, not allowing yourself to own your own tastes, to your own point there, where it's like, I shouldn't like this. This is wrong for me to like. And the reason it's wrong is because, well, what will people think about me? And if people think that about me, well, then I'm not safe. And I'll be abandoned again, or I'll be betrayed again, or I'll be hurt again in some particular way. And so when you're living more from your soul, you're living from a place where you're not constantly trying to protect yourself. You're not constantly trying to guard yourself from the ways the world and other people will hurt you, which is really just you not hurting yourself.
Yes, yes. There's no need for a safety blanket. The soul's like, that's cute. That's so funny. Aw. Why would I be worried about that?
And just on the subject of safety too, one of the things we were chatting the other day when we were talking about getting on this podcast, and one of the things you mentioned was the people who come to your Constellations events will often talk about, wow, that was such a safe space. And I experienced that too. The collective energy that you created where everyone's holding space and there's no projection of judgments. It really feels like there's something about the way that you hold the space in those containers where people's stories and assumptions and projections are suspended for a second, even if they're deep in their own shit. Even if people have been living the same crap and the same story and they're all wrapped up in their own stuff, there's something about it, like you feel like there's a pure liberty to speak and act on the impulse and what's coming through without fearing misunderstanding or misrepresentation or projection or any of these other things. And that there's a feeling of safety. And you also said, well, I'm not trying to create a safe space. I don't give a shit about your safety.
I know. So, again, I said earlier, many great truths are great paradoxes. If everyone who walked in there, if I had the intention, I'm going to keep them safe, I want them to be safe, I would not be able to facilitate what their great soul is trying to create. If I see them as their great soul, and I think that's what creates the frequency and energy that everyone else is then suspended of the judgment, because there's a space for everyone's soul to participate. If I respect their great soul, of course they feel safe, because that's what they actually are. It's like I'm being seen for who I really am, which is not broken, which is not someone who should be guilty for things they did. It's not a sinner. It's not that. You're a great soul. So I don't need to keep another great soul safe. I trust and I respect that great soul. That's the part of you I'm looking at. Because that's the part that I want you looking at more often. Go out and be that. I'm so in favor. So I think it's like Burning Man or something. I heard that. I've never been to Burning Man, but maybe you know this. They have one of their rules is safety third. It's kind of like a play on that phrase, like safety first, safety first. And I heard that once. I just love it. I'm like, hell yeah, come to Constellations, safety third. Like obviously I'm aware of trauma, and I'm watching someone's body, and I'm titrating how we're going. And I'm not like going to throw someone in a pot of boiling water if they don't have some protective gear on. Like we're not. Sometimes I'm intense and aggressive, but I'm coming from love. Like I'm not trying to. I'm not also trying to disrupt anyone's safety, but we have a lot of trauma-informed spaces that end up not being effective for people, because they're too much bubble wrap for us, and they stop us from recognizing our own resilience and our own capacity. So, in my jiu-jitsu, the only way for me to get better is for me to have experiences where I fail and to push my limit and to suffer. That's part of the game. Your soul, the only way for it to expand and evolve involves feeling sensation. It is not wrong to feel sensation. So I don't bring someone to my constellation going, you're going to feel safe, you're not going to feel it. I'm going to wrap you in a nice fluffy bowl. Like, you're going to feel things, because that is what creates your brilliant life. That's how you strengthen this soul. And the big part of this, the space that I host out of in Vancouver at Sky Studio, that place is safe. That place has been good energy for many years. Tina, who owns the studio, she's a loving light in this planet. So there's also something about the frequency emitted from that space. And that's why, I'm so excited to be coming to Peru and joining your retreat, because I'm like, wow, I know the conversations Anthony and I have when we're on, most of our relationships are FaceTime. Most of the time we spend, like, we're going to get to be in person in Peru. What's that going to do? right? Like the energy of the Sacred Valley is going to be supporting us too. It's going to happen there. So part of it also, I just want to shout out to Sky Studio that the space is a beautiful container.
And there is an element of the environmental safety and it's, like you said, the trauma-informed spaces, you do create a bit of a paradox, right? Because when you are trauma-informed and you're being so careful and you're bubble wrapping people and you're handling them with kid gloves, there is this inherent projection that, like, you can't be trusted to feel your own emotions, when the intent, I imagine, is to create enough felt sense of safety for a person to be able to access and process and experience those things so that they can be worked through.
Yeah. What it actually is it's not even, to me, it's a little bit worse. I'm going to get on I'm slice and dice here. It's even worse than, I don't think you can handle feeling that. What it actually is the facilitator, I can't handle you feeling that way. It's actually my own, if I can't watch someone cry and be okay, it's that I'm not okay with crying or whatever feeling that it, like, so it's not even as kind as, oh, I don't want you to feel that. It's actually, I can't feel that, so please don't bring it around me.
Or maybe there's even a fear of personal competency, where it's like, oh, if you touch on these things that are so deep and so traumatic and have affected your nervous system and your psyche in such a profound way, and we touch on these exiled parts that, spin you out and dysregulate you to a certain extent, I don't know how to hold a container for that.
Exactly.
I don't know how to move you through that. I don't know how to hold space for that. And so the trauma-informed space is really like informing a person on maybe even just like coming into facilitation within their own scope and their own capacity as a facilitator, which ultimately is like, yeah, it's great, it's considerate, it's respect for the scope that you can provide.
Yes.
And ultimately it's going to limit a person. It's going to not allow the person to actually access the depth and see the truth of what's going on, because there's a cap to what you can be in. And so even though you're creating safety for certain emotions to come up that you might not have environmental or relational safety for in your own life, there's still a limit to how much truth you can actually hold within those spaces.
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. I think it's also a sign of a great facilitator who knows their own limits. So it can also come from, okay, this is not in my capacity. This is either too close to me, or this is not something that I know how to handle in the physical sense. So it's actually out of respect for the great soul, I'm not going to allow it to show up here. So so I love that. It's not just I'm not willing. It can also be, oh, there are other practitioners, there are other spaces that can hold this, and let me send you there. So thank you for that note too.
Because I think to be able to hold space in this type of work, you need to be so personally clean yourself, to speak to your point of like, I don't care if these people like me. I am free from that. In fact, I'm not trying to make them feel good at all. That's like a sign of a really good coach, is not trying to please the person. It's trying to serve the person. It's not trying to contain the person in another set of systems, frameworks, labels, or diagnostics. It's to see the person and witness the person and allow them to see past their own stories. And if we have our own stories that we're projecting onto ourselves, we're going to project them onto other people. That's when you need these limitations or these constraints in trauma-informed spaces.
Yes. And that's also why I don't want anyone to trust me more than they trust themselves. I want them to leave trusting them. Don't buy what I'm saying either. Trust you. Trust you, trust you, trust you. Like, that is what I want to do as a coach and as a facilitator, is I want to catalyze deeper self-trust. This goes back to this being in the body. And so part of it's not just, I don't need you to like me. I don't need you to believe me. I want you to believe you. But listen to your body when you do it, because the story may be that you're running up here, you believe, but it's not, it's not giving you what you need. What's going on here? That's my job, is to help what's coming here.
And I want to actually add another layer of nuance here too, because the body can lie to us as well. Right? There's no sensation that we experience that is not subject to interpretation. Right? So even like some sort of intuitive hit or feeling from the body, we could have a story about that.
But that's still the mind. That's the story.
Yes.
So the body's not the one lying. Our story about it.
I'm going to push back a little bit. Just a little bit.
This is fun. Let's play.
Yeah. I'm going to push back a little bit. So I have been a personal trainer I was a personal trainer for like 10 to 15 years and worked with the body to some extent, and learned a lot about pain signal and a lot about hunger and appetite when people were trying to lose weight. A popular narrative when I was a personal trainer was this idea of intuitive eating. And it's just listen to your body. You don't need to count macros. You don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. Just listen to your body. The problem with that approach is that if a person has been eating hyper-palatable foods for a long time, say they eat a bunch of Doritos and Cheetos and ice cream, and that's the primary thing of their diet, they have a distorted appetite signal now. They have had so many exaggerated inputs that now the sensations in their body and the cravings and the inputs that they're feeling, or maybe they have like a candida overgrowth that like sends these false signals to want to have more carbohydrates and more sugar to feed the candida. They have this place where it's like, actually for a hot minute, you can't trust those inputs because there needs to be a cleaning of the signal. And I will say, it's like I've had full body responses in relationships where my partner does something and I have a story about what it means about myself, and I have a full body constriction, shutdown, and because I'm seeing reality from a negative or like a distorted place, I'm having a body reaction to it. And if I just listened to my body in that instance, I would say, oh well, I'm not safe in this relationship, I should leave, or I have to change something about myself so that my partner feels a different way about me. But that's not me seeing reality. I can have body responses, and those are cool trailheads to actually go back. Maybe you can trust the body in that like, oh, there's a feeling here. This is a trailhead to follow to the story to find why this story's occurring. But yeah. I think the signal can kind of get mixed up.
I love it. So I think get information from your body, meaning don't just keep buying all the information that your mind has been telling you. What information is your body giving you? So yes, those people who have been eating the palatable foods, at first glance, the information is, I want to eat more Doritos. So I'm a craving. But then it's like, actually, your body's giving you other information. You aren't able to move the way you want. You are having trouble sleeping. Whatever else is going on in the body is also something that deserves that there's information there too. So I love this call out, and I would still say, like, trust the body. Why don't I make it like, it's like befriend the body, like be in the body having an experience and getting information and being very available to that information. And just like anything in life, we get better and better with repetition. So I expect and I intend that as I keep connecting with my body, she's going to be telling me, I'm going to get information that's like, actually, we don't like what you were doing before. That wasn't actually working. You thought it was. You thought you were listening to me. You weren't. I'm totally open to that. But the only way I get there is if I get into my trust, and I get into my trust, and I get into my trust. And so the only way to become more a great leader of this vessel, the only way that my soul gets to embody this and it gets more and more in touch with what's possible, like I expand more of my capacities, is to go in and believe that it's got something good to say. Like I go back to jiu-jitsu. It's like, I have to believe it's possible for me to win before I can win, even though, if I look at me even now, it's like, it's not actually possible. Like, who does she think she is? That's crazy. That's a crazy belief. But now I can do things I couldn't do a year ago because I'm bought in to this as valuable. there's something here that needs more playing with, Anthony.
Yeah.
There's something like really juicy here. And I love, like, maybe I want to get more refined on my messaging of, it's not necessarily just trust the body, but it's, what is my relationship with my body, and what's it, am I listening more to the media? Am I listening more to my friends? Am I listening to da-da-da more than I am my body? Am I listening to my old stories more than I am my body? Then I gotta flag that.
Well, I think, a little aha moment that I had as you were talking too is that sometimes it's not even the sensations in the body. Obviously we have stories that will filter our experiences, and our bodies will have responses based on the distortion, right? But I think one of the catches, because we were talking about like the mind getting in the way of actually seeing reality, is most of what's happening. If you have a distorted signal or like an unclear perception of reality, where you're talking about cleaning your eyes in terms of doing this work. If we see reality incorrectly, then we'll have incorrect bodily responses, but then we make stories about the responses about what that means. So we're putting it on loop. Versus if we kind of gather this information, I loved actually the pushback on my pushback of like, yeah, but your body's also saying you're not moving well, you're not sleeping well. Yes, you have this craving, and that's a strong signal for you to want to eat more Doritos, but like, it's also saying, it's like, hey, your joints are inflamed. Hey, your stomach is roiling every time you eat this crap. And so these other signals are saying you don't want this. Which signal are you going to trust more? And I think it's allowing yourself to take like all of the information and then not to necessarily assume what it means, right? Like for me, one of the biggest practices that I'm going through in my own life and in my own coaching is checking my assumptions. It's really relinquishing so many of my assumptions. Strong opinions, loosely held. And I'm really emphasizing the loosely held part right now because I don't know what I don't know. And I don't know where I have these unconscious stories where I'm projecting things that are not true onto my reality, including projections about what the sensations in my body mean about me. And what's interesting to me is I actually think the cool trailhead for me lately has been, what is my default story about the sensation in my body? When did I start thinking that about myself? When did I make that meaning about myself? When's the first time I had this sensation?
I think this is wonderful. One of the most important beliefs we can go through with through our life with is the belief, this is not a life sentence. Meaning anything I am experiencing now, or however these sensations, what they mean, whatever this assumption is, it's not a life sentence. Just because I hold something today doesn't mean I have to hold it tomorrow. Just because I've always experienced reality this way, just because my body has always done this or this or this. And so I find that to be an empowering way to then make change if you want to make change, or allow for change to happen to you. Because I'm not tied to the reality that I made the story about before, right? So checking your assumptions is beautiful, and so is, I'm willing to change. This isn't a life sentence, even if I don't need to know, even if I don't need to go on a goose chase to what assumption is making me have this reality right now. I love that. And I know you also take action, right? So we're not saying, I think we're not saying, spend all your time evaluating all your choices and look, it's like, no. Be in the world, live from this body, express it, enjoy it, and check yourself.
Yeah.
Before you wreck yourself.
And I actually find, in the moments where I'm feeling like I'm wrecking myself, those are actually the best times for me to check myself. I'm not a big fan of the like perpetual shadow work always going in the unconscious. To your point, be in the world, be in your body in relationship to the world. Then when there's like this feeling of energetic drag or incoherence or resistance or like a big trigger, move in the direction of that trigger instead of away from it, because there's going to be some juicy information about that. And on that note, I think this is a pretty good place to, I think we could go on for ages and ages and ages, but if I'm listening to my body right now, I got to empty my bladder here pretty soon.
This is the perfect time to end. And all I wanted to say on that last piece, my friend, was the fun of it too is that you get to listen when it's good, right? Like, it's not just, oh, there's a negative single. It's like, oh, I feel better when I'm doing that. Like, those relationships feel nice. I leave that conversation feeling, ooh, feel good. Like, oh, I can create more assumptions, create more realities where I have more of that. So I'm so happy that I got to see you today and talk with you. Thank you.
I'm so stoked that we had this conversation. It was a blast, and I can't wait to do it again. But I will, because I actually can wait. And I'm so excited that you're going to come to Peru. If anyone wants to check out the Peru retreat, we still have a couple of seats left as of February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone who is listening, not on Valentine's Day, because we're going to publish this later. But Brooke, if people want to learn more about you and more about your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, come hang out with me on Instagram at Brooke is Fearless, or VancouverConstellations.com has all of the upcoming public workshops. I do one-on-one work as well with constellations and coaching. And Anthony, I'm so excited for whatever the field takes us to next. And I'm wishing you and Soul an amazing Valentine's Day. I'm so confident you're going to have a fabulous love day. Every day is Valentine's Day, right?
It is, pretty much.
Yeah, good.
After we made space for that relationship in the constellation, it's...
Life is good, baby. Life is
so
good.
So,
Great
Brooke,
to be
thank
with
you
my friend.
so much. I'm going to put all of your social links in the description of this episode, and I cannot... Well, I will wait. I can wait, and I will wait for the next time we have another amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
You're going to be excited for our next conversation.
All right, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.